Hello poetry readers and whoever else, welcome back to the channel. I have been in my romance era lately. I've just been in the mood to have fun, to giggle, to swoon over a man, and I achieved my goal. Yes, that I did. Today we are talking about 4 different books that may differ in the specific style and genre of romance that they're in, but the one thing that they do have in common is that indeed they made me giggle, they made me kick my feet, and they made me cackle like crazy. That's right, that's right. This whole series of me just reading romance back to back, unintentionally might I add, has just made me realize how important the book you're reading is to your mood. Because at one point, in between all of these romances, I randomly read this really dark and really morbid book, and in the period while I was reading that, let's just say the mood was questionable. It was not very fun, I was not cackling, I was not smiling, not giggling. Then as soon as I started a romance, I felt like all my problems had been solved. Life hack, if you're feeling sad, read a romance book. Anyway, I am not gonna let this intro go on any longer because I know exactly what you guys want to hear. So without further ado, grab a drink, perhaps a snack, and let's get started with the video. Just a disclaimer, I read 3 out of the 4 books we're gonna talk about on my Nook. Let me just take her out of her sleeve and reveal her. This Nook is crazy. I posted a video about this on my YouTube and also on my Instagram, and the response was so divisive. This baby starts wars. This is a face that launches 1,000 ships. But as I was saying, the first book we're talking about, which is My Kind of Trouble by L.A. Schwartz, I read on my Nook. I very luckily was able to read it as an advanced reader's copy. The ARC was provided to me by my bestie NetGalley. NetGalley and I were like this. So I just wanted to say thank you to that platform and also to the author because she actually saw my review and she followed me on Instagram. So me and her were besties now too. Listen, going into this book, I did not have many expectations. As with all the books I read, I don't really go into books with any expectations, but if I had just one like general preconception before going into this book, My Kind of Trouble, I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, although actually I'm lying. Yes, I did have an inkling that I was going to like it as much as I did. Now, you may be asking why. This is my answer. It's because the love interest is an introverted, shy librarian. I will say this now, and I will repeat it until the day I die. We have such a lack of bashful, socially awkward, very endearing, charming men love interests and books, and I need more of it. I demand it. This is an announcement to all publishers, all authors. If you think that there is no market for that kind of romance, you are looking at the market. Anyway, let's get into the plot of this book. So My Kind of Trouble is a contemporary adult romance, and it follows our FMC, or our main female character, Miss Harmony Hale. Very cute, rom-com appropriate name, yes. Harmony Hale is this really stunning bombshell of a woman. She's curvy. Another thing we lack in books, curvy representation. And not curvy for the sake of a sob story curvy. Curvy just because the character happens to be curvy. This book is actually really good about representation and diversity, which you will understand as I go on. But back to Harmony Hale. Aside from being very, very pretty and very charismatic, she is also a con woman. Not the kind of con woman that like steals for the sake of getting rich and robbing people. She's a con woman with an agenda. A con woman with a vengeance. A Robin Hood, if you will. Harmony Hale's next con mission is very personal to her. It has something to do with her dad, and this mission takes her to the small, cozy town of Brookville. Rom-coms and small towns, they go together like this, and when they're together, you know the book is about to be good. This is probably the biggest con that Harmony has planned so far in her career. In order for her to pull it off, she has to acquire a plot of land in Brookville. Who owns this plot of land, you may ask? Cue the choir, cue the cheers. It is owned by Sir Preston Jones. Yes, yes, yes. Preston Jones is the local town librarian. This plot of land has been in his family for generations. It's like an heirloom sort of thing, so he's not going to let it go that easily. But Miss Harmony Hale needs this land, so what she has to do to get it is to cozy up to Mr. Preston Jones. Normally, Harmony doesn't have a difficult time getting what she wants, especially from men. First of all, she's a great liar, she's very charismatic, has a great personality, and she's also objectively pretty. So in theory, Harmony thinks that it would not be too difficult to get close to this Preston guy. However, on day one of their meeting, Harmony sidles up to him and he's like, Sir, would you care to talk? And Preston is like, no, thank you. There is only one type of man who would be resistant to Harmony's charms, and that is a man who is socially awkward, which Preston is. Inherently, Preston Jones is a very introverted, very quiet, almost comes across as like perpetually grumpy. He's that kind of a man, but on top of that, he is also autistic, so it kind of makes it difficult for him to socialize with people, especially pretty women who admittedly make him nervous. However, bad social skills aside, which I can relate, sympathy to Preston. Bad social skills aside, the real reason why Preston actually dismissed her like that is because he thought she was just one of those momzillas who've been threatening to shut down the library. Now, this is where the book really gets me. One of the conflicts in this book is actually based off of things that have happened in real life, namely libraries that have had books pulled out because they contained themes related to queerness, to LGBTQ topics, which were deemed inappropriate to kids by many white adults. Maybe you have heard news about that, maybe you haven't. From what I've seen, these things typically happen in more conservative countries in America. States, sorry, not used to that. Preston is the kind of like wholesome librarian who hosts these reading club for children where they talk about diverse books with varied representation. He is also the type to host readings with drag queens. That is also another issue that has been brought up in real life. To him especially, it's very important to shut these complaints down and keep those books on the shelves, because for him, being the minority that he also is, he really found a safe haven in the library as a child, so he would want all types of children of any gender, of any sexuality, of any sort of anything to find comfort as he did. So when he first laid eyes on Harmony, even though he was like, oh, wait, she is kind of very pretty. By the way, this is dual POV. Yes. If you don't know what dual POV is, it basically means that the chapters alternate from the perspective of Harmony and from Preston. But even though Preston shuts her down, Harmony will not give up. Her job literally hangs on Preston. So she is persistent with it. She visits him at the library every single day, tries to get closer to him, tries to get a single word out of him. Eventually though, they do get to talking because Harmony establishes her identity within the town, and she kind of proves to him that she's not after shutting down the library. So he realized that, oh, it was just a little misunderstanding. So they end up working together on a festival that Harmony is arranging for the town. This festival may or may not be a fluke. And through all this planning, they get closer. And I think you know what happens. I felt so connected to the characters, and I just love them so much. The dynamic between Harmony and Preston was so entertaining to witness. Seeing a man be vulnerable in a book for once was just so refreshing. Usually it's just a grumpy man, an alpha male. And while I do find those types of male characters interesting as well, I just feel like these kinds of characters like Preston, are so underrated. And what I've noticed is that they are usually the characters that go into my top 5 book boyfriends ranking. Preston is definitely in the top 5. I will not try to give you a definitive ranking of who is top 1 to top 5 because I might just have a heart attack trying to do that. I'm very indecisive. I just love them. I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. So good. I highly recommend it. I forget when this book releases, but I'll just put it across the screen so you know when you can run to your bookstore and go buy it. Because yes, you should run. The next book is one I can finally hold up and is the only one I can actually show you in this video. It is The Foxglove King by Hannah Witten. guys. Last month was just such a good reading month. When Hannah Witten wrote this book, lives were changed. The ozone layer closed by a couple of centimeters, and an entire year was added to my lifespan. That is how good this book is. This is the Foxglove King. It is the first book in the Nightshade Crown trilogy, I believe. As you can probably tell by the cover, this is a fantasy. It's not entirely just romance. It is a romantasy, aka romantic fantasy. And aside from that, it is also very gothic, as the cover probably implies. And something about me is I love gothic books so much. It's just something that really easily gets me hooked into a book. And with this book especially, it just made the experience so amazing, because the world building in the Foxglove King is probably some of the most unique work I have ever seen in a fantasy series ever, which is saying a lot. So for this book, we follow our main character, Lore, who has a lot of secrets. Probably why her name is Lore. Side note, I really love her name. I'm surprised it took this long for a fantasy book to have a character with a name Lore. But anyway, Miss Girl has many a secret. For one, she works as an undercover spy for a poison cartel. Now you may be wondering, why would a cartel deal in poison? That is because poison in this world is actually sort of like a drug, and not just any normal type of drug. It's a drug that makes its consumer immortal if they consume it right. Specifically, when we're talking about poison in the Foxglove King, we're actually talking about mortem, aka death. Bear with me, I'm not gonna give you a whole history lesson on the myth of this book, but I will give you a few important key points. The people in this book used to believe in multiple gods. However, at one point, there was this thing called God's Fall, where the god of the day and the light battled the goddess of the night and the darkness. The goddess was defeated. She fell to the earth, and her body is buried in the catacombs beneath the city. Now, this body is leaking mortem continuously, and people have learned to harness it in a way to stop their aging and make them live longer. Doesn't the world building just sound so cool? Another secret that Lore has is she's actually able to sense and channel mortem. This ability makes her pretty good at her job, since she's surrounded by poison and poison users. But one day, she's assigned to a very risky job that ends up going wrong, and she is taken in by the Presque Mort. The Presque Mort is essentially a sect of monks under the church who are tasked to rein in the mortem. How it works is that the way a person can channel mortem is if they have died and come back to life. So that is what happened to these monks, to these men, and they are the only ones who can legally channel mortem so that it doesn't leak too far out into the city. So when Lore is captured by these men, she's expected to be arrested or to be thrown out into the mines, which is basically a torture sentence, a death sentence. But to her surprise, they actually go, "Oh, we have a proposal for you. It's either we dump you in the mines or you work for us and spy on the crown prince." Interesting setup. Very juicy setup. So she goes undercover in the royal court, but not alone. She is accompanied by one of the Presque Mort. His name is Gabriel Ramat. Now you may be thinking, ooh, are you implying a love triangle between Miss Lore, Mr. Crown Prince, and Mr. Gabriel? Yes, but wait, Mr. Gabriel is a monk. He's a man of God. How is that supposed to work? Ladies, a man is still a man. The romance in this book is probably the best love triangle I have ever read, and that says a lot because there are literally a million bajillion books with love triangles. Typically, when you read about a love triangle in books, from the start, you're already decided on which man you're gonna root for. It's like laid out in the cards already. The second lead is just there for drama. But in this book, I was constantly going back and forth between the Crown Prince and the monk. It was just so good. And honestly, even at the end of the book, I did not know who I wanted to root for. If I was Lore, I would not have known what to do. It's just also City of Bones starring Lily Collins and Jamie Campbell Bower. It is just that type of vibe that is so entrancing. I loved it. What did I rate this book? I rated this book 5 stars. No less than 5 stars can be accepted for this kind of masterpiece. If you read it, do let me know which love interest you're rooting for, because I'm very interested. Anyway, speaking of master, the next book we're gonna talk about is once again an arc that was provided to me by NetGalley. NetGalley, thank you, I love you. It is Masters of Blood. Once again, a romantasy, but this time it's not just any old romance, it's dark romance. Guys, I was just in the mood, okay? I was craving something a little bit darker that would make me giggle, but also would kind of be a little bit questionable. Sometimes you're just in the mood for that. So this is the first book in a series, but I'm pretty sure that you can read it as a standalone. Masters of Blood is a Hades and Persephone retelling, except make it vampire. If you don't know about the story of Hades and Persephone, in Greek mythology, Hades was the god of the underworld, I believe, and Persephone is the daughter of somebody who he kidnaps and forces to be his bride. Certainly questionable. Forced relationship, marriage without consent, a 400-year-old age gap. Listen, I grew up on Wattpad reading werewolf fiction. I have also watched multiple times the cinematic Hall of Famer Twilight. Above all, I used to read fanfiction about the girl in the messy bun getting sold to One Direction. I am no stranger to questionable romantic setups, which is why, even though this book kind of made me cringe and grimace a little, I ate it up without shame. So Livana, our main female character, is a human princess, and she is supposed to be betrothed to one of the last remaining human kings, King Nicholas. However, during a meeting with all the rulers of the different kingdoms, including the vampire rulers, because vampires and humans coexist, she meets King Orion, and he's like, why hello, in a very seductive manner that obviously implies that he's attracted to her and wants her to talk to him. This first meeting was so funny to me because he goes up to her all dark and sultry with a very knowing look in his eyes, and her only response to him is, no thanks. Literally, I could not make this up if I tried. Now, Orion is fascinated by this woman who has the nerve to turn him down with a no thanks. And what happens a few months later is that she ends up getting kidnapped by Orion, and he's like, I am saving you from this doomed marriage with King Nicholas, so we are going to get married instead, and you are going to be my wife and my queen. It's the kind of romance where the male love interest is very alpha male, very possessive. If you touch her, I will rip your head off your shoulders. Very literally, that quite literally happens. And to be honest, the fact that all of this possessiveness and the romance being so over the top kind of made it easier for me to read, because it made the whole thing a little less serious, because I cannot handle men who seriously act like that. What do you mean he growled? What do you mean his eyes darkened? What do you mean his jaw clenched? If a man seriously did that to me in real life, I would laugh in his face. So long story short, I enjoyed this book in a very non-serious way. I was just there for the fun, for the giggles. And by the way, I knew going into this that it was going to be a dark romance because I obviously read the description. And typically, dark romance means that the book is going to be explicit. It's just the nature of dark romance. But I was not expecting for this book to be that explicit. It's not the worst thing I've ever read, but let's just say it got very creative. I rated it 3 stars. Not bad, not my favorite book I've ever read, but I also would recommend it to people who like dark romance. I feel like this book would be very entertaining. But that's it for the third book. Now we talk about our final book, which I also read as an ebook, but this time it was not an arc. I actually just finished this yesterday, and I was on such a high when I finished this. It just made me feel so good. Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. So now we're veering away from the realm of dark romance and of fantasy. This is just a plain old romantic comedy. So we have our main female character whose name is Lark Thompson. She is a Texan girly who moves to Ireland because she has a new job there as an art director, I'm pretty sure, at an animation studio. This is actually the first time I've read a book where the female character is an animator, like that type of artist. Usually when I read about artists, they're just like the typical painters and you never know what they're painting. But this time it's about an animator, and it was actually really interesting to read about. So her first day there, she's unpacking her bags. She's got some packages on the front step delivered to her, and lo and behold, one of the packages has body bags in them. She's like, why are there body bags? Like body bags for dead bodies. She realized, oh, this package is actually addressed to my neighbor. Why would my neighbor have body bags delivered to his house? So she goes over there and confronts him. And first of all, she thinks, oh, this guy's attractive. First of all, he's attractive. Second of all, why do you have body bags? As it turns out, this guy whose name is Callum Flannelly, he's actually a mortician. If you don't know what a mortician is, they're basically the dudes, well, not always dudes, they're the people who run funeral homes and like get bodies prepped for funerals. So she's like, oh, this was all just a very big misunderstanding. You're still creepy, but I trust you a little bit now. Now, Callum has no idea how to react to all of this because, like our first love interest that we talked about, Mr. Preston Jones, Callum Flannelly is also very socially awkward. He's introverted and he has this really charming stutter that makes it difficult for him to talk when he's nervous. And I'm pretty sure this happens the first time that he meets Lark, because first of all, she's very pretty. My man does not know how to talk to women, unfortunately, which makes things very hard for him. Willow Haven, which is the funeral home he runs, is a generational thing. It was passed down to him from his grandfather. However, in his grandfather's will, there was a condition that for Callum to keep the funeral home, he has to get married before he turns 35. How is he supposed to do that when he doesn't know how to talk to women? How is he supposed to do that when he never leaves his house? He is pretty much on the verge of giving up. He is literally not putting any effort whatsoever into it because he is the type of person that has a really hard time liking people. He sees a girl and thinks that, wow, she's very beautiful, but he isn't like, oh, I should ask her out. I have the urge to ask her out. No, he doesn't get that urge very often, but then he meets Lark. And it's a miracle because typically he doesn't know how to speak to girls. He's very quiet, but with Lark, he has a very easy time loosening up because Lark is this very easygoing, very talkative woman who does not give up with Callum. She's so patient with him even though he takes his time trying to think about what to say to her. She just keeps on talking and has a great ability of keeping the conversation going. So they end up becoming great friends and Lark decides to help him with his whole finding for a woman to marry thing, but that becomes a little difficult because they start liking each other. Now we have a conflict of interest because Lark and Callum are very good friends and maybe they do like each other, but they're not the right people for each other. Lark doesn't know if she has what it takes to be a wife. She has baggage that she's not ready to open up about yet, and Callum is not ready to confess to her because he doesn't want to jeopardize their friendship, which is, first of all, very frustrating. It made me so mad while I was reading, but second of all, it's also very understandable. This book is just the cutest thing ever. I loved reading this book. I literally don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to do besides giggle. I rated this book 4 stars, so obviously I highly recommend it. By the way, if you guys want to be updated with what I read in real time, and if you want to be able to read my iconic, very informative, and very efficient one-liner reviews on Goodreads, we can be friends. You can just click the link below. My favorite review among the ones I gave all these 4 books has to be the one for Masters of Blood. But anyway, those are all the romance books that I have been loving. Hopefully you were able to pick up something new out of this because as far as I've seen online, I haven't really seen anybody talk about these books that much. I just happened upon them and I am so thankful that I did because I had the time of my life. If you do end up reading them, maybe come back to this video and tell me in the comments what you thought of them. I just want more people to read these books and have the same fun that I had. I am also not planning on ending my romance streak anytime soon. I went to the bookstore yesterday and bought Funny Story by Emily Henry. Ladies, when I tell you I did not even have to look at the description of this book, I just bought it. That is how much I trust this woman. If you have any other fresh, fun romance recommendations, comment them down below. I would love to read more giggly books. But yeah, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great week ahead. Goodbye. I also have a different drink today. Dot Coffee is closed, so I got an iced matcha latte, oat milk, less sweet with sea salt creme from Zeus Coffee. Yummy, yummy, yummy.